Hi, Neil here from Vehicle Life 75. Today we're going to be doing a nice spotlight on that nice Saleen behind me. A buddy of mine here from Rocen Auto Sports is the owner and driver of that vehicle, and yeah, we're going to do a nice spotlight on it and tell you all about it. Alright, so here's Todd with a Saleen. So what year is this, Todd?
It's a 1986 Saleen Mustang, and a Saleen Mustang is kind of like a Shelby Mustang. They were made at a different location than the Ford assembly plant. They were taken to a location, they were modified, and then they were sold brand new on a Ford lot. And the 86 is technically the third year that they made the Saleen Mustang. So a race car driver named Steve Saleen, he approached, I think, Dodge, GM, and of course Ford, with this idea to take their sports car and modify it to make it a little bit better, and then sell this modified version. And Ford's the one that went for it. So that was kind of neat. This one is, every Saleen Mustang has their own serial number. Like there's your factory Ford number, but there's the production number. This is 86 number 127, and they have a number on the front bumper cover, and then there's a serial number plaque on the console that it tells that it's manufactured by Saleen, and its serial number as well. It's just ahead of the shifter.
Okay, oh, right down there.
Yep. Cool.
That's cool.
So when I was probably 20 years old, I started looking at Mustang magazines. My first car was an 83 Mustang GT. My parents helped me get it. It was a used car, obviously. It had like 80-some thousand kilometers on it. It was in really nice condition. And then when you start looking at Mustang magazines, and Saleen had these ads on the back where you could buy ground effects kits and rims, and you know, there's all these other companies that you could get stuff for your car for. And I already had my 83, and I came out of my parents' house in Esterhazy, and about 4 or 5 houses down the street, I couldn't believe it, there was a 84 Mustang GT that had the mesh style wheels, 16-inch wheels, Saleen ground effects package on it, the rear wing. It had actually a bolt-in roll cage and a few other goodies. And actually at that time I didn't really know where all those parts came from, so I knocked on the door of the house where the car was parked, and this fella came out and he told me all about it. So that's where the bug kind of bit hard. And so on my 83 GT, I converted it over to a fuel injected motor out of an 88, got a Saleen body package, got some American Racing 5-spoke wheels, the rear spoiler, and a few other things. So I essentially had a clone or a tribute car. And where I worked at a dealership in Grenfell in the early 90s, you know, I'm working at this dealership and I have this car that's a Saleen clone. And one of my bosses was down in Texas, and he says, "Hey, there's a guy selling an 86 Saleen Mustang down here. Do you want it?" Well, when your boss asks if you can have, or if you want this car, well, of course you'd like to say yes, but it took a phone call home to mom and dad in Esterhazy, and I said, "Look, my boss has access to buying this car, and is there a way we can get it?" You know, I didn't even see it. I didn't even see a picture of it. He told me all about it. A guy that was probably about 42 years old owned it. So the old guy at the time, because I was, you know, 23 years old, I guess. He worked at a place called Turbine Tool, so he was kind of a technical fellow, and he gave Paul all the specs about the car. And well, mom and dad said, "Well, we'll help you out to get this car only if you sell your other car right away." So luckily, a fellow that I knew in Grenfell, he bought my 83 GT. I gave Paul the go-ahead to pick up the 86, and a couple of weeks later he walks into the office where I worked and he threw this picture down on the table and says, "Well, there's your car. Now you got to go get it." So my friend Mark, Greg, and my brother Chris, we hopped in my parents' Oldsmobile, drove down to Minot, flew into Texas, and drove the car back. Mark had a Mustang that he picked up for himself, and Mark and Greg stayed for an extra day down in around San Antonio, and my brother and I drove back right away because we had to get back to Grenfell, because we left on a Wednesday and I was back Saturday night for a house party. Obviously, this was the 90s, so you had to show up at the house parties. And I honestly didn't know totally what I had. I knew it was kind of a rare car, and at first Saleen had said that there was about 199 total production in '86, and I think that number is somewhere around 205. The documentation wasn't as good back then, but they figured there's about 205 of these cars. I thought they made a couple thousand of them, so I was really wrong. And I have to say, the car, I'm really happy with the way it still looks, because I had it painted in '94. The paint's still shiny. Darren in Grenfell at the body shop there did a great job painting it. They used some really good paint because it's obviously still nice and shiny. I've modified things. The car is actually on its 4th motor because of modifying and breaking blocks. I took out the original 302, put in a modified 302 which became supercharged. I made enough power that we cracked the block. So we got a stronger block in a 351 Windsor. I had that in the car for about 13 years. I finally got a dyno tuned to maximize everything, and a couple weeks later I broke that block at the Cam Busters Fun Day in Yorkton. So now it's got its last engine. It's still supercharged. It's probably a little bit overkill for the car, but now that I'm a bit older, maybe I'll hold back a little bit, but it's fun to drive. One thing that I really found, I'm kind of putting it back to more of a street car, because I did kind of have more of a drag race suspension in it and stuff like that. It's still going to make a ton of power. I just love the way it looks. This would have been a brand new car when I was 16 years old, even though I didn't know they existed. And you know what the really cool thing is? By having this car for about just 28 years now, just over 28 years, all the really awesome people I've got to meet over the years because of cars. There's friends that I've met over 20 years ago. They may be driving Mustangs or Camaros or Volkswagens or who knows what, and you get to meet some really cool people over the years, and a lot of these people are still friends today, and honestly that's priceless. So,
that's true. That is true.
if you want, we could pop the
Cool.
hood. I'll show you the latest.
Let's see what we got under the hood on this bad boy.
So it's based on a 351 Windsor, but it's a stroker. It's a 427, and it's got a Vortex supercharger. And the Vortex supercharger was made for a 302 just because of the bracketry and stuff, so we had to modify a few things to make everything fit, but it seems to work pretty good. It's got an aftermarket computer that it's probably a 20-year-old computer, but it's still programmable and adjustable, and it does the trick. And just in the last year, I tidied up some of the wires and cleaned up under the hood, and it seems to work really good. So,
Right.
you know.
So you ever dyno it? Now?
The last motor, the supercharged 351 with the Pro Charger, made about 600 horsepower at the crank. And this one should be more, but I want to keep it on pump gas, and I just want to make it user friendly so I can go fill up at any gas station, because you know what, yeah, more power is always better, but there's always going to be somebody who's going to have more power than you. That's the way it's always going to be. I'm just happy. I said this is the last motor this car ever sees, knock on wood. I want to be able to just turn the key and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I kind of made a little Facebook meme on my Facebook page how the Doc and Marty went back in the DeLorean to tell 20-year-old Todd to keep all the parts that he took off the car and save it for 50-year-old Todd, because he's going to put it back to more or less closer to original. So for all you guys, the young guys that have a kind of a neat car you think you're going to keep, try and keep as many of the unique parts as possible, because they're going to get really hard to find in the future. So but for the most part, I've kept everything that was kind of unique to the car, except for maybe some generic Ford parts that you could get really anywhere. And the way you see it on the outside, and even the inside, except for the roll cage, this is essentially the way the car looked when it was new. Like, that's the ground effects it had. Those are basically the wheels it had. It has 16-inch wheels. Back in 1986, that was kind of a high roller wheel. Like, my 83 GT, I'd like to have had 16s on it, but they were too expensive, so I was happy with the 15s that I got for it. But
so is that the original pinstriping on it?
no, when we painted the car in '94, we got another stripe kit, and technically this is about an '88 kit, because the '86 kit should have had a straight line in here, but that's just what we happen to have.
Oh yeah.
So it still looks good.
Oh yeah.
This is the original spoiler that they had with it, and got to have a little bit extra weight over the back tires for traction because it's needed.
Yeah, so high voltage. Must be a flux capacitor that you're talking about?
Well, yeah, and we're going to put the Mr. Fusion in pretty soon for a little extra power. I likely might take a part of the cage out, because as you get older, guys, it's a little harder to crawl over the bar to get in and out. I might have a swing out removable section there, because really, you know, how much is the guy going to really race it now? And we really don't have the place to race it like we used to, like in Esterhazy or in Yorkton. And
yep.
I'm just happy driving it and enjoying it. And you know, it's always going to require a few little maintenance things because it isn't a new car. But I like it. It's a car that the average person can still work on. I like it. It's unique. And like I said, it would have been a brand new car when I was 16, even though I didn't know these existed. So I really am lucky to have it and enjoy it, and I hope I can continue to enjoy it for many years yet.
Well, it is a beautiful car. So you ever check to see what it could do down the strip?
When I put the 351 Windsor in it, that's actually, so I blew up that motor about 4 years ago. So with the new Windsor in it, would have been close to 20 years ago or 19 years ago. I took it to Saskatoon and it ran 1124 at 124.7 with virtually no tuning. Like, I didn't have it on a dyno for that or anything like that. And I know over the years with the Windsor, it would run mid 7s, 7.4s, 7.3s in the 8th mile. And I think my best in the 8th in Yorkton here was a 699 at about 99.1 or 2 miles an hour. So I know it's picked up in the 8th. I can't say I have a 10-second time slip for it, but it had to have been close if I was able to. And with this combination, it probably will exceed that quite easily, I think. But you know what? As long as it's reliable and I can have fun with it, that's the main thing.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful, man. Very beautiful car.
You know, I see that 68 Shelby drive up and down Broadway in Yorkton every summer, and when I see that car go by, I just have to stop and watch it drive by because it's just amazing. And you know, that gentleman's probably a little bit older than me, and I'm going to be probably him cruising around in Yorkton at times, you know, from time as a future.
Yeah. Well, I bet you get a lot of people stop and watch you drive past.
Well, you know, everybody has their preference for a car, and if you talk to most guys, it's whatever they grew up with is kind of what they like. So when I talk to some of the older fellas, guys that are older than me, they like a Chevelle or they like a 68 Mustang or something. And of course, a lot of the younger guys like their Evos and their well, there's a lot of really cool imports.
Yep.
There's just so many different cars that a person could fall in love with to enjoy. And for the job I do, being a pre-owned car dealer, I can honestly say that I'm not brand loyal like I was when I was 25 years old, because, you know, let's face it, guys, when I was 25, Mustangs were the best and everything else was not the best kind of thing. And now I don't look at it like that. I can get really when I look at an import, or I look at a muscle car or a hot rod or a mud truck or anything. There's some really cool stuff out there, and when you look at those vehicles, I get ideas for little things that I could use on my car, even if it's how to make a bracket for something. So everybody has something to bring to the table for everyone else. It's like they do the engineering for you. So everybody looks at things differently, and I really like some of the stuff that's cruising around Yorkton. It's really neat. It's, in fact, if you don't go look at this stuff, you can't understand how cool it really is until you walk up to it up close, and it'll blow your mind how cool some of these cars are. A lot of them have a lot of technology in them, and we have technology in this a little bit, but it's old school technology. And then there's the muscle cars, have, you know, they got carburetors, you know, very little wiring. They're nice and simple, and they work really well. So they're all so different, but they're all pretty cool at the end of the day. So
that's one thing with Yorkton. There's such a variety out here, eh?
Well, that's one thing that I really like. Like I said, is just seeing what everybody else has, and a lot of these cars give me ideas of things I could do to my car even. So it's a never-ending project. There'll always be something to fix, or something to modify, or just to make better. And I could still lift up the car cover on this car and just stand in my garage and just stare at it. If you're not into cars, you might not understand it, but it's just been really neat. It's hard to explain, but I've thoroughly enjoyed owning this car for, like I said, just over 28 years.
Yeah, well, it's like I said, that's a beautiful car. Very, very beautiful car. Mind if I take some inside?
Go for it. Yeah.
Oh.
I had
kind of see.
That's actually Steve Saleen's signature. He wasn't actually sitting in the car when it was done, but when I had my 96 signed by him in South Dakota in 2019, I took my dash panel down, and he signed that when I was at the Saleen International meet in 2019. So that was cool. Meeting Steve Saleen, it was really interesting, because I felt like a groupie at a rock concert. You know, what do you say to this guy? I was speechless. I wanted to ask him a few things, but what do you ask a guy that he's kind of like up there with Carroll Shelby, and like Carroll Shelby is an obvious legend. And I was just grateful that I got to meet him, and that was sort of one of the cool highlights in my life, to meet someone like that. Because did he ever think it would have got to be that big? You know, he's just some guy that liked cars and liked racing cars, and it kind of took off from there. So, but
yeah, no, meeting your idol is one thing, but meeting the person of your favorite car that designed it is totally different, eh?
Yep. No, I'm trying to think of anything else I could tell you about it. Like I said, it's fourth motor. I think it's the third transmission. This transmission, it's a Tremec TKO 3550. It's a little heavier transmission. It stood up really well over the years, especially when you would have drag race launches for however many years. You'd rev it up to about 5,000 RPM and dump the clutch, and it would just grab, and the front wheels sometimes might come up off the ground, and so it's held up really well. Time to get the rear end rebuilt. It's got a little bit of play in it. But for the most part, I'm not going to say I was easy on the car for a number of years, but I still kind of looked after it. Like, I raced it, but the roll cage probably helped keep it together, because it being a unibody car helped give it some structure. And like I said, if something needed to be repaired, I fixed it. You know, I definitely, raced it for fun, but I tried to keep up with any of the maintenance just to be able to drive it anywhere. That's my goal. I want to be able to drive it anywhere.
You got to take care of your baby, right?
Yep, that's right. No, that's
all right. Well, I thank you very much.
Well, thank you for taking the time to stop in and let me tell you about the car, and hopefully we'll see everybody out cruising in the weeks to come. Enjoy the rest of the summer, and I hope I can go and check out a few other people's cars, because like I said, it's really cool to see what other people are driving and what they've done to their car. And I thoroughly enjoyed the car shows that have been around Yorkton, and meeting a lot of people because of it. So that's the thing about being in the car culture that I really like.
It's like a big family.
Yep, that's right.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thanks for taking the time.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank Todd for doing the spotlight on his Saleen Mustang. Beautiful car, beautiful. Anyway, thanks for watching. Keep watching for more. I got more cars coming. Everything from, I got a Chevelle and a few other ones that I'm going to be bringing back in. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, Instagram, YouTube, Vehicle Life 75. Thanks. Bye.